He's on, dude. B. All right, you ready? Holmes, you ready?
All right. Is this working?
Beto, hello. How are you?
Hey, sorry I'm late.
We're okay. How's your day going?
It's really good. It's really good. We just did a little bit of a trip to New Mexico and Colorado to do some camping and, be up in the mountains, swim in some lakes. Just this big road trip with the family. And we just got back, was it yesterday? Yesterday maybe, or the day before? I can't remember.
Nice.
But we just got back. So we're like, it's just balls out, as hard as we can, trying to catch up with everything that's going on. And it's great. There's a ton of work to do. So I'm really happy about that. But very interested to join you for this interview. And I read the backup and I love the concept. And so very happy to help in any way that you think I can be of assistance.
I appreciate that. And from the bottom of our hearts, Michael and I just thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We created this web series in their 20s because of the 2020 pandemic. A lot of our, friends, classmates, peers were, confused with a lot of questions on what they need to be doing right now in their lives. 20s is such an interesting time to try and figure it out. So Michael and I, found the solution to that. And we really feel that by interviewing, influential people, to give them a platform to reflect on, their 20s, what they were able to do and create for themselves. That would just really give people in their 20s now the tools they need to succeed. So it's a mix of giving the important advice and then also the inspirational content. So, we really are having a lot of fun doing this. And, we are, again, fortunate to be able to speak with people like you. I mean, this is amazing. And I know everybody that watches is really going to appreciate this as well.
Love that you are beyond what you all are doing in your day job and in your, careers apart from this, that you're also finding a way during this quarantine or, however we're spending this pandemic, finding a way to still connect with people, even if we can't physically be present, and share something that's valuable to others. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you. So, and also Michael's in Florida right now. So we're going some pretty interesting places right now. I'm in Chicago and this is really cool.
That's great.
So, yeah.
That's great. I noticed it looked very green behind you, Michael.
Yes. Yeah, I ended up visiting my mom this week, and she's down in Florida. So
good. Well, we've got the country covered: Chicago, El Paso, and Florida.
We did
all around.
We're doing it right. So Beto, we can start with the first question. If you could tell us about a defining moment in your 20s.
Well, that's a big decade, right? So I had graduated college at Columbia in New York and had chosen to live there for the indeterminate future. I just, growing up in El Paso, Texas, actually, as beautiful and extraordinary and absolutely unique as it is. There's no other place like this where two countries come together and form one community, or you're in the Chihuahuan Desert, or you're at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. Visually, culturally, binationally, I mean, by any way you look at it, measure it, or see it, I won the lottery by being born and raised in El Paso. And yet, perhaps not unlike too many other young people, I just could not wait to leave once I had the chance. And I wanted to be what I thought was the center of the universe, which is New York City. I went to school at Columbia, worked really hard, studied, passed all my classes, graduated in 4 years, was a varsity athlete for 2 of those years on the Columbia crew team. And, played in a band, played shows around the city, discovered girls, really for the first time in my life, probably had my first date in college, drank my first beer in college. So, a lot of life is opening up to me. And then post-college moved to Brooklyn. This was in 1995. And, working odd jobs, playing music, which I thought was going to be my career, or at least that was the passion that I wanted to pursue. And I was there 3 years after college, and I just had this epiphany, for lack of a better word, one day riding the subway. I had about an hour-long, 2 different train commute to my job up in the Bronx. at the H.W. Wilson Company. And it was summer. I was sweating. I was pressed up against the glass in a crowded subway car. And I just had this vision of being back in El Paso, Texas, and, you know, being in a truck with the windows rolled down and having some personal space and some freedom, and being in the desert or backpacking in the woods in the Gila Forest in New Mexico, just getting the fuck out of New York was really what came to mind. And kind of, you know, from that subway ride at that moment, I made the decision to come back home. And so that's a decision and a moment that stands out to me, because it turns out to have been the best decision I ever made. I came back and saw my hometown with new eyes and realized how lucky I had been, and this embarrassment of riches, again, culturally or geographically, or any way that I could appreciate. I was so lucky to have come from El Paso. Now I got to return and got to be with my parents. My dad would die a few years afterwards, and, you know, unbeknownst to either of us, he would die in an accident, but got to spend some years with him. You know, got to see other family members who would pass away before long, and, you know, got to connect with them in a way that was very meaningful and has stayed with me. And then I had this great fortune of being able to start a business here in my 20s. You know, started a small technology business and an online newspaper. This was in 1998 here in El Paso. Ran for and won an office on the El Paso City Council. Met my wife, et cetera, et cetera. All that flowed from that decision. So felt, you know, very fortunate to have been able to go to Columbia, to have lived in New York for a few years, to have met wonderful people there. But making this decision to come back home in my 20s set me up for so much of the success that I've had in my life, most importantly with my family.
So that's amazing that, you know, you were able to make that decision in your 20s. Yes, you know, you got away. I went to New York for a little bit, got to experience that, only to really understand that, no, like, El Paso is where you need to be. So I love that story. That was beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, very, very fortuitous decision. And, you know, New York, like Chicago, where you are, is one of these magical places on planet Earth where people come together from all over the world, and the level of talent and accomplishment and performance and whatever it is someone's doing is unparalleled, right? And there's something very exhilarating about being there and getting to be a part of it, or at least witnessing all of that. But you know, to know who you are, and maybe to also know who you are not, is a real gift. And I had that epiphany on the subway. I am not a New Yorker. I love this place. I've had a great 8 years in New York, but I'm a Texan and I'm an El Pasoan, and I want to be back there where I belong and where I'm from and where I can give the most back. So no, that was a really good decision.
And based on all those positions you had throughout your 20s, you talked about your passion about being in a band. What would you say was the most interesting or unique job that you had in your 20s?
Oh, I had so many of them. You know, in college, you know, from 18 to 22, I worked every year. I was in college, work-study jobs, and then odd jobs outside of college. And, you know, from window washer to delivered the Sunday New York Times to the dorms at Barnard College, to security guard at Columbia University. But after I graduated, my uncle, this is 1995. So imagine, you know, the internet revolution is really beginning to turn. And there are all these opportunities for entrepreneurs. And my uncle, who lived in Soho, down on Franklin Street, Tribeca actually, was one of those entrepreneurs and was able to raise some money and start an internet-based business. And he hired me. And so I had an in through family, and I was installing ISDN cables. So pre-Wi-Fi, you know, everything that was connected to the internet was hardwired in, and I would, you know, go to businesses, install their ISDN systems, the modems and the cables to their computers. I would design web pages. I would learn, you know, rudimentary programming, HTML and PHP. And then at the same time, I also got a job working for a high-end art, furniture and antique handling and moving company called Headley's Humpers on Prince Street. And humping is a Britishism for moving. At least I understand. It means something different for different people, especially in the US. But I was a Headley's Humper, and that meant delivering these beautiful artifacts to wealthy people, you know, all around the greater metro New York area. So I'd be in a box truck with a driver, or sometimes I was a driver, and we'd be delivering, I mean, in some cases, Picasso's, extraordinary sculptures, beautiful antique furniture, stuff that I could never afford, will never afford, but that I got to appreciate as a 23, 24-year-old, you know, $10 an hour, or maybe it was less, you know, employee. And that was really, I mean, all the people that I met on the job, all their different backgrounds, all the beautiful homes that I got to go into and see, being at the warehouse, working with the crate makers, including Dave Ford, who ended up becoming a really good friend and actually lives in Evanston, not too far from where you are right now. You know, I then, my last job, the one that I was on the train to in the Bronx when I had my epiphany about coming back to Texas, was at the H.W. Wilson Company, which was back then located at the Yankee Stadium stop. And I worked as a proofreader there, which meant that I was just reading copy all day long and making sure it matched up with the final draft of whatever copy I was reading. And you got to work early, like at 7, and I think you got out at 4. And on days when the Yankees were playing home games, very often they'd let you out even earlier to be able to go see a Yankees game. So that was also a really interesting, you know, job where all I was doing all day was reading. And really you're reading for parody. You want to make sure that what you're reading matches the final copy, but you can't help but pick up the stuff that you're reading in these various journals about psychology or anthropology, or, you know, a million different subjects or things. So all of those were really interesting jobs for me, but none of them became a career. None of them was in any deep way fulfilling. All of them helped to pay the bills so that I could live and play music and feed myself and do the things that I wanted to do as a young man in New York. But all of them gave me some of the background I would need to pursue other things that did end up becoming my career, whether it was as an entrepreneur myself, starting a technology company, not too unlike the one that my uncle started, or being involved in politics and working with people in that field. So they were all interesting jobs. None of them, though, became a job that I wanted to stay at or devote my life to.
Yeah, I like how you said that these might not necessarily be a job that you plan to stay at, or, you know, at that time in your 20s, it could have just been a job that you needed money to put food on the table or pay your rent. But I like how you showed that even though this might have been not your dream job, you still pulled some skills away from it that could be useful. So what, in your opinion, what were some of the most important skills that you acquired in your 20s? And are you still using these skills today?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've got to think way back, right? Because I'm almost 48 now. So what was it that I picked up in my 20s? Well, I mean, certainly it was one thing to work while I was in college, which was tough, right? To balance your job, your schoolwork, and for 2 years I was a varsity athlete where you had 2-a-day practices. And I got to tell you, those were the 2 most exhausting years of my life, almost bar none, with the exception of some of the things that we've done recently and some of the campaigns that we've run. But that certainly, I think, helped to develop a work ethic and a sense of discipline where, as you get older and into your 20s, your mom's not there to wake you up or remind you that you got to go to work, or to, tell you what the consequences are going to be if you don't. There are people depending on you, and you got to show up, and you got to be there, and you got to deliver, even if it's not your dream job, even if this isn't the thing that you're most excited for in the world, even if you don't wake up, just can't wait to get down to work. You're like, shit, I don't really want to go to work. But you know what? You got to go to work, and you got to build that reputation that people can depend on you, and that you're going to deliver, and that you're going to follow through. And I think that's one thing, independent of any given discipline or job or career path, is the reputation that you are able to build through the work that you put in. And that carries through across whatever you do next, whatever city you happen to be in, whatever career path you jump over to from the one that you just left. If your reputation is such that this guy or this gal can be depended upon, they're innovative, they're the first to show up, they're the last to leave, they will go through a wall for you to get the job done, then it does not matter what that next job is. You want that person on your team. And I'll tell you, maybe, Michael, another way to answer this question is as an employer. So as a job creator, when we started our businesses in the late 90s here in El Paso, and then grew them, and over the years, hired dozens upon dozens of people, or as a member of Congress, with a large office, or in the U.S. Senate campaign, I probably had more than 1,000 employees. Across all of those different opportunities that I had to build teams, I wasn't always looking for the person who was necessarily super proficient in the job at hand. I just wanted somebody who was going to work their heart out, who was going to be really smart and thoughtful about how they approach the job, who was going to be respectful of others around them, and yes, who was ambitious. And I think those were all traits that I in some way or other discovered along the way, and then sought out in the people that I wanted to surround myself with. And so I think that's the way that I'd answer the question. I just learned the value of hard work and those who work hard, and I always wanted them on my team. Whatever I was doing, you want those folks on your team.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're working at a job, it may not necessarily be your dream job, but if you put in your hardest work, maybe your manager, gives you that recommendation you need to get your dream job. So if you're putting in the hard work, people will notice.
That's right. Absolutely.
So we heard about some of the passions that you had in your 20s, sports, music, all really exciting. We want to understand, how can you balance professional life with the many passions that you can have? Is there a balance, or is it more of a harmony?
I tell you what, thinking about my 20s when I was not married and when I didn't have kids, and we're so lucky. We have 3 kids, and they're 13, 12, and 9 years old, and they're the center of our lives in a very positive way, for which I am very grateful. But they're also the center of your lives to the exclusion of other things that you could do in your life. So I love music. I love playing music. I'm not saying I'm good at it or that I ever was good at it, but that doesn't matter. That's besides the point. I loved playing. I loved being in a band, and I loved the connection I made with the friends with whom I played music. There's something that transcends human language and the typical ways that we communicate when you're making music with somebody. Maybe the same is true for high performance athletes who are on a team together, or people who dance, but for me, it was music. And it's very hard to do that now, right? It just logistically, how in the hell are you and these other folks who also have kids and careers and maybe don't even live in the same city anymore, how are you going to get together and play? Not that it can't be done. It's just really hard to do that now. So my advice to my 25-year-old self is, well, shit, if you are free of these responsibilities and this level of accountability, which again is a gift and I'm grateful for, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, but there was a time when I didn't have it. And you do have the opportunity to pursue that passion, or to take that trip, or to work that job that maybe doesn't fit the career path that you laid out for yourself, but it's interesting to you and you want to give it a shot. By all means, do it. There are no penalties that I've been able to ascertain in my life or the lives of others that I've known for taking chances and risks when you're young. And obviously there are stupid risks. And then there are risks that somehow correspond with your passion. And you're going to get to an age where you're just not going to take those risks because you're too ensconced in a scene or a career or a way of life. And it would just, you think, well, it'd be too ridiculous for me to do this, or how in the world could I just up and go and do this thing? Well, when you're in your 20s, and again, not everybody in their 20s was in the same place that I was. You may be married, you may be a surgeon, you may be in the Air Force, you may have a really important mission and job and set of responsibilities that prevents you from doing that. But if you don't, I've seen so many people squander the opportunity to take risks and chances and to do something that may turn out to be dumb as shit, but you did it, you got it out of your system because they felt like they had to be on this track. They were on this track in high school, they were on this track in college, and by God, they're going to stay on this track and get ahead. And there's the risk of burnout, and there's the risk that you deny yourself this chance to try these things that you really won't get a chance to do later in life. So to long answer your question, Michael Landon, the balance is much easier to strike, if there is such a thing as balance, when you are younger and a little freer. When you get to where I am in life, closing in on 50 years old, the options constrain, and that's just part of life. So, I mean, blow it out when you got the chance, and again, don't be dumb about it. Don't do anything that would foreclose other meaningful options for you. But in my case, playing in a band, working different jobs in different disciplines, you might conventionally have thought that's not a recipe for success. And I'm sure it caused my parents some level of consternation because they had also taken out loans to help me go to college in addition to student loans I took out. But shit works out. It really does. As long as you keep that focus on those things that we talked about earlier that you want to distinguish yourself by, the discipline, the hard work, the thoughtfulness that you bring to a job, and the respect that you show others. I think things work out.
I love that. I mean, experience is the best teacher. Michael and I, we had many different jobs while in college, and, we still had our school, but I mean, we got involved in things that, related to the industry we were working in, and then also, tried to test our limits and try and get involved in other things as well. And we really, learned a lot from that. It's important to take risks in your 20s, get out there, jump in the deep end, try something new, because I love what you said. I mean, the 20s, you have more time to do that. So
absolutely,
we're really trying to, yeah.
And know as many people as you can, right? Like, again, when I don't know if you all have kids, but if you don't, when you do, your world also, your social world constrains to other families who have kids, your kids same age, which is a great thing because the kids, get along with each other. You get along with the parents because you're having the same situations, but your circle of contact, closes tighter and tighter. And that's just the way of things. And the risk is if you start doing that too soon and don't expose yourself to enough different views and perspectives and life experiences, then I think you become a very narrow person and you have a harder time, figuring out how to get along with the rest of the world. I'm sounding like an old man now. I didn't know that was going to happen in this interview where I'm like giving all this advice.
It's wisdom. This is great.
Yeah, well,
wisdom.
I don't know about that.
No, we love it.
Discount this stuff.
We have one final question for you. We want to hear your best advice for young people interested in getting involved in politics, public service. How can they get involved? What should they be doing right now? And how can they make a difference?
Yeah. Well, the good news is there has never been, and I mean never been, a better time to get involved because literally you could save the world. I think that when the histories are written of the year 2020, and be they written 50 years from now or 500 years from now, this will be seen as a very defining, very decisive moment for the United States, for sure, but for civilization given the outsized role that the United States plays in the world today, and has for the last 70 years, and could for the next 700 years, depending on what we do. We also have the chance to potentially lose it, and lose it all, and lose it big. So there's never been more on the line. And in a democracy, which we still are, although I think there are some legitimate questions about how much longer we will be one, and to what degree we are one, but we are. It's government of, by, and for the people. There are no sidelines, and there's no taking a pass, and there's no sitting this out. You're in the game. If you live in this country, you are in the game. And even if you decide not to participate and not to vote, that's a decision that you've made in this game. And it's one that will hurt all of us, and certainly hurt you. So there's that. But the upside and the exciting part is, this is the stuff that legends are made of, right? I mean, when the chips were down, when the stakes could not have been any higher, where were you? And what did you do? And how did you decide you were going to make a difference? Did you run for office? Did you volunteer on a campaign? Did you register your friends to vote? Did you speak up and confront those in positions of power already and challenge them on why things are the way they are right now, to try to force them to make them better in whatever issue moves you, be it climate or criminal justice or healthcare or whatever? There are a million things that might move you. Whatever that is, your willingness to stand up and literally confront those who hold these positions of power and public trust and privilege, man, that's a powerful thing. And it is the exception and not the rule in world history. In most countries, most civilizations, it is strictly top down, and you don't have the chance as an average citizen to make a difference. You still can in the United States. I really believe that. So if you want to get involved, I'll tell you, from my experience volunteering and working on campaigns, and then being a candidate and running campaigns, the same fundamental rules of being successful in life apply. I cannot tell you how many times I hired the woman or the man who, when I was getting to my office at 7:30 in the morning, when I was in Congress and I was working in the Capitol, would be waiting at my door and would introduce themselves and say, hey, my name is Jessica, and I'm from Texas, and I like the work that you're doing, and I want to have a shot to work in your office. Well, what can you do, Jessica? Well, I don't know. I'm willing to do anything. I'll if you want me to type letters or address envelopes or, do research, what you just put me to work and I will do it. And there are so many times where that was the only connection I had to somebody, was their very obvious desire to perform at a high level and to do whatever it took to be successful, and by extension to make me and my office and the community that I represented here in El Paso successful. And I wanted that person on my team. And so by that same token, if there's a campaign, a candidate that you're excited about, show up at their office before they open. Be there when the campaign manager turns the key. Introduce yourself, offer to make coffee or whatever the hell they need that day. And then just make sure that they can't get rid of you. You just keep showing up and make yourself indispensable. And soon enough, you will be hired. You will start moving up. They will know that they can rely on you. And I think especially in campaigns, which are such massive efforts that are expended over such a short period of time, people are looking for talent, and they make decisions based on merit, and your drive and your discipline are rewarded. That's been my experience, at least. I mean, show up, get after it. What's the worst that can happen is they tell you to go home, and then you don't want to be behind that person anyhow to begin with. So there are millions of our fellow Americans who are yet unregistered to vote and have the chance to be registered and to help decide the most important election of our lives. Find a way to register them. Ask everyone. I mean, this is simple stuff you can do on your own. Ask everyone in your contact list if they're registered to vote. And if they're not, help get them registered to vote. In your own words, share the stakes of this election and why you are so moved and so passionate to get involved, to vote, and to help decide the outcome. And that becomes infectious with your friends, your classmates, your colleagues. That's what I have found. But, last thought, though we're at a moment of maximum peril in this country, I've really never been so optimistic because there are so many young people who are getting after it, and they're not waiting for direction or guidance or permission. They're just going to do it. And they could care less what I think about it, which is great. That's the way it should be. Or anyone who is, in a position of power or in office already, they're just going to get after it and do it. And that's very promising and is cause for optimism and hope for our country. So I really have no fear that the young people that and that you're bringing this programming to, I have no fear that they're not already after it, and they're not already making this change that we all want to see.
I mean, as young people, we are the future. We're up next, and we all have a unique role to play in this as well, to get involved. And when it comes to involvement, you're really saying you just got to be fearless. You got to knock on someone's door. And if you're sending, emails to people, I mean, don't be afraid of rejection. Try again. I think, you literally only live once. So now is the opportunity and time to really try and grab everything you can and get involved. So I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And listen, for anyone who, doesn't have a candidate or a campaign or a way in that's obvious to them, we started this organization called Powered by People here in Texas. We are literally calling person to person, human to human, American to American, every Texan who's registered to vote who is likely a Democrat. And those aren't easy phone calls, right? I mean, you're gonna get people who don't want you to call, who are gonna hang up on you, who say that you got the wrong number, who tell you they're voting for Donald Trump. And then there are some really transcendent, magical calls where you reach somebody who's a Biden supporter, who needs to know that their vote is important, who's glad that you reached out to them. And at the end of the call with them, that you've made a difference, and that's a vote that's going to take place otherwise might not have. Join us at Powered by People. Call the folks in the biggest swing state in the country that will decide the outcome of this election.
Well, thank you for including that. And we'll make sure to include information about that as well in the description
Appreciate
of the video. But yeah, no, sounds amazing. Michael, did you have any additional questions for Beto as well?
No additional questions, Beto. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Yes.
I really can't stress how thankful I am for you taking time out of your busy schedule for us. I know our viewers, especially because we have not spoken to someone in public service yet, I think they're going to gain a lot from this. I think,
100%.
Just you telling them to really get out there. It's your 20s. This is when you have the most time. We talked about that multiple times today, that now's the time to get out there and try your best and take risks that you really can't later in life when you have other responsibilities.
Absolutely. I think you said it better than I did. I think that's the spirit with which you need to approach this moment, especially given what's going on in this country. You don't want to, after all is said and done, you don't want to look back and wish you had because you didn't. Just go out there and do it now.
And thank you so much for the energy you brought. I mean, the amazing advice, inspiration. I mean, that's really everything rooted within our mission and what we're trying to build here. So, Beto, I mean, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Really, really appreciate this.
It's an honor to be on with you all. And likewise, I think there's just some really powerful, beautiful energy in what you both are doing and what you're bringing to other people. And so I feel very lucky to have been asked to be a part of this. So thank you. And hopefully when all this is over, you all take a trip to El Paso and we get to host you and welcome you here. And
that'd be amazing.
But until then, be safe and stay healthy.
Will do. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Adios.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
buddy.